Hi there, my name is Mrs. Challis and I'm the Head of Geography at Penrice Academy, and I'm going to be talking to you today about the weather. Already you've heard about the weather as part of your French and Spanish lesson, so I'm going to carry that on with some geography, and I'm going to show you how you can measure the weather in your school or in your home. You can see that I'm stood here at Penrice. I'm going to talk you through 4 ways that you can measure the weather in your environment. I'm also going to try out a little bit of Spanish. Miss Smith has taught me some Spanish and I'm going to try it out. So in Spanish, and you might remember this, how do you say what's the weather like? So I'm going to read it. It's ¿Qué tiempo hace? So that's what is the weather like. So we're going to look at 4 ways that we can measure the weather. We're going to look at cloud cover, and in Spanish that's las nubes. We're going to look at rain or precipitation, and in Spanish that's la lluvia. We're going to look at wind. I'm going to show you 2 ways that you can measure the wind. We're going to look at wind speed and wind direction. And then finally, I've just got a little bit of information to show you about temperature, and that is la temperatura. So we're going to start by having a look at cloud cover first of all. And we measure cloud cover by using something called octas. And on the PowerPoint you can see I've got a chart for you that looks a little bit like this. It's on the PowerPoint, and what we do is we divide the sky up into 8ths. So when you look up to the sky you can make a judgment as to how much cloud cover there is. Now we use something called octas, and this is where you divide it up into 8ths. Now interestingly, in Spanish 8 is ocho. So it's kind of got a similar word to it, like octopus has got 8 legs, octagon has got 8 sides, so that's why we use octas. So I'm going to look up and I'm going to make a judgment as to how much cloud cover there is. I think there's probably about 6 octas from where I am. If I look, you can see behind me we've got quite a lot of cloud and then some blue sky, and then I can record that on a little worksheet or on a table. So that's the first one, that's cloud cover, las nubes. The next one is I'm going to talk to you about is wind. So the 2 things that we can look at for wind is wind speed and wind direction. So first of all, wind speed is when you make a judgment about how fast the wind is blowing. Now today the wind it's not really that windy, and what we use for that is called the Beaufort scale. So the Beaufort scale is a way of making that judgment, and on the PowerPoint you'll be able to see there's a little table of the Beaufort scale. And what's really good about this is there's some diagrams to show you what's happening. So you've got to have a look at the land around you and see what impact the wind is having on the grass or on the trees or on the branches. So you might be able to see some of the branches moving, but they're not moving very much. So I'm going to have a look on my Beaufort scale. I think that it's probably a very light breeze today. In fact, if I stand here, I actually can't feel the wind very much. So you might just say that it's calm. So those are the top 2 on the Beaufort scale. And what that does is, you have a look on here, it also gives you an equivalent of wind speed. So you can then judge, well, how fast is it? Well, it's probably 1 to 3 miles per hour today. But you might know, when you do it, it might be a lot faster, and you might be able to categorise it as a fresh breeze or even a fresh gale. So that's your wind speed. The next one is wind direction. So for wind direction, you've actually got to know where you are. So you've got to know where north is. So where I am, so in Penrice, if I look that direction, I know that that's where Charlestown is. So I know that that's south. So if I turn and face that way, I know it's south. I also can feel the sun on my face, so that gives me another indication that I'm facing south. So then I need to orientate myself to be north, so I know that north is there. And then I've got to stand and kind of just wait really to see if there is any wind blowing in my direction. So I can make a judgment and think, well, where's the wind coming from? Sort of blowing my hair in this direction slightly, and I can make a judgment that that wind is coming from the east, probably a little bit from the south as well. So we might make a judgment that the wind is coming from the southeast. So that is your wind direction. I'm sure your teacher will help you to do this when you go outside. You'll be able to orientate yourself in your school or orientate yourself at home. So the next one that I'm going to talk about is temperature. So this in Spanish is la temperatura. Now for temperature you really do need a thermometer. So you might have one at home, or your primary school might have one. So for this one, I don't have a thermometer here at the moment, and you have to leave the thermometer on the ground, preferably in the shade. And I've asked you to think about that. So why would we need to leave a thermometer in the shade? Well, if I can actually I feel quite warm stood here, so it doesn't really give me an indication as to the actual temperature if I put it out in the sunshine. So it's really important that if you do have a thermometer, that you put that in the shade. So those things that I've talked to you about, you need to record. You can do that over a 5-day period. So the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is precipitation. And for this, I'm going to show you how to make a rain gauge. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make your own rain gauge, and you can make this so that you can measure the precipitation, that's the rainfall. And in Spanish, I've got to get my pronunciation right, that is la lluvia. So to do that, all you need is a plastic bottle. So I've used a plastic water bottle, and I've cut the top off and I've turned it upside down. So if you look carefully inside, you can see that I've inserted the top of the bottle inside. And then what I've done is I've taped that together so that it doesn't fall out. And then I filled the bottle up to a point, doesn't matter how much, but about that much. And the reason that I've done that is you need to have a flat surface to measure. And quite a lot of water bottles have indentations at the bottom. That doesn't give you a very accurate reading. You can actually use Play-Doh as well. I've actually seen someone use jelly. So you could always make some jelly to put into the bottom, but it's just as easy to use water. And then what you need to do is you need to put a measuring tape up the side. So I've just used masking tape and I've measured it out in centimetres. What's better is if you can measure it in millimetres, because what you'll find at this time of the year, although we have had quite a lot of rain the last couple of days, is you'll find that there isn't as much rain as you would have in the winter. So if you've got maybe a ruler or something, you can stick to the side and then you can make that measurement. So all of the things that I've spoken to you about, you can do in your school and you can do at home. And I think the best thing to do is to make those measurements over a week. So you could perhaps draw a table. So you would have your rain, your precipitation, you'd have your cloud cover, your wind speed, direction, and if you can measure the temperature, you can add that to your table as well. And what I've suggested is if you create any tables or graphs, you can always email me your work and I can have a little look at what you produce. Okay, thank you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.